The envelope in Penelope Carter's hand felt heavier than paper had any right to feel, and the red letters spelling "Final Notice" seemed to pulse with each frantic beat of her heart as she stood in the kitchen of Sweet Haven Bakery at 4 in the morning, surrounded by the scent of rising dough and her own failure. She had 30 days. 30 days before the bank took everything her grandmother had built, everything Penelope had poured her soul into for the past 3 years, since Grandma Rose had passed. The mortgage was 6 months overdue, and despite working 16-hour days, despite cutting every possible corner, despite sacrificing her own salary to keep her small staff employed, the numbers just wouldn't add up. The big chain bakery that had opened 2 blocks away had stolen half her customers, and the construction on Main Street had made parking a nightmare for the past year. She set the envelope down with trembling fingers and began measuring flour for the morning's first batch of cinnamon rolls, because what else could she do? Give up. That wasn't in her vocabulary. The pre-dawn routine soothed her somewhat. Knead the dough. Let it rise. Shape it with care. The same movements her grandmother had taught her when she was barely tall enough to see over the counter. Penelope was 26 now, and some days she felt ancient, but here in this kitchen with flour dusting her forearms and the warmth of the ovens surrounding her, she could still feel like that little girl who believed in magic and happy endings. The bell above the front door chimed at exactly 6:30, just like it did every Tuesday and Thursday morning. Penelope wiped her hands on her apron and pushed through the swinging door to find her most punctual customer standing at the counter, looking unfairly put together for someone who also had to be awake at this ungodly hour. Marcus Osgood was tall, broad-shouldered, and had the kind of presence that made the small bakery feel even smaller. He wore expensive suits that Penelope couldn't help but notice, even though she tried not to notice anything about him beyond his order. Dark hair, strong jaw, eyes that were somewhere between gray and blue depending on the light. He'd been coming in twice a week for the past 2 months, always ordered the same thing, always left a generous tip, and always had this quiet intensity about him that made her stomach do complicated things she absolutely did not have time for. "Good morning," she said, forcing brightness into her voice. "The usual, please." His voice was deep, smooth, and "Whatever you recommend today." This was new. He never deviated from his standard order of black coffee and a plain bagel. Penelope blinked. "Really? You sure you want to live dangerously?" The corner of his mouth lifted slightly. "I think I can handle it." She found herself smiling genuinely for the first time since opening that terrible envelope. "All right, trust me, completely." Something about the way he said it, looking directly at her with those steady eyes, made her cheeks warm. She turned quickly to the display case. "The lemon lavender scones are fresh. My grandmother's recipe. They're my favorite. Then I'll have 2. As she boxed them up, she felt his gaze on her. It wasn't uncomfortable exactly, more like curious, attentive. She'd noticed before that he seemed to really look at things, at the bakery, at the chalkboard menu she read through every week, at the photos of her grandmother on the walls. Not like someone just passing through, but like someone actually seeing. "How's business?" he asked as she rang him up. The question caught her off guard. Most customers stuck to pleasantries about the weather. "It's good," she lied automatically, then wondered why she bothered. He was just making conversation. "Actually, it's been challenging, but we're managing." He nodded slowly, and she had the strangest feeling he knew she wasn't telling the whole truth. "This place has been here a long time, hasn't it? 43 years. My grandmother opened it when she was younger than I am now." Penelope handed him his change, and their fingers brushed briefly. She pulled back too quickly, fumbling a quarter. "She was braver than me." "I doubt that." He said it so matter-of-factly, like it was obvious truth rather than kind speculation. It takes courage to keep something going, especially something you love. That's harder than starting. Penelope stared at him, this stranger in the expensive suit who somehow just articulated the exact weight she'd been carrying. "That's exactly it," she said softly. The moment stretched between them, warm and unexpected, until the bell chimed again and Mrs. Chen bustled in for her morning Danish. Marcus stepped aside, gathering his coffee and bag. "Thank you, Penelope." She realized she'd never actually introduced herself, which meant he'd learned her name from somewhere else. The thought pleased her more than it should. "See you Thursday. You can count on it." He paused at the door, looking back. "Those scones better be as good as you promised." "They will be," she called after him, and found herself watching through the window as he walked down the street, broad shoulders squared against the early morning chill. "Mrs. Chen cleared her throat meaningfully. "That man comes in here twice a week like clockwork and looks at you like you hung the moon." "He does not," Penelope protested, but she felt her face heat. "He's just a nice customer, him, and I'm the Queen of England." Mrs. Chen tapped the counter. "You young people, always so blind to what's right in front of you." Penelope busied herself with Mrs. Chen's order, but her mind kept drifting back to Marcus. To the way he'd said her name, to that brief moment of connection, to the warmth in his eyes. Then she remembered the envelope sitting in the kitchen, the impossible mountain of debt, the ticking clock of 30 days. Romance was a luxury she couldn't afford. She had a bakery to try to save. The rest of the day passed in its usual blur of customers, baking, cleaning, and more baking. Her assistant, Jenny, a cheerful 19-year-old college student, handled the afternoon rush while Penelope worked on the books in the tiny back office. The numbers were just as depressing as they'd been that morning. She'd already taken out every loan she qualified for, already asked every friend and family member who might be able to help. Her parents were retired and living on a fixed income. Her brother was drowning in his own student debt. There was no miracle coming. Unless she could somehow triple her revenue in the next month, which was impossible, Sweet Haven Bakery would close. The thought made her physically ill. She was still staring at spreadsheets when Jenny knocked on the door frame. "Hey, boss. That guy just called. The Tuesday-Thursday regular." Penelope's heart did an unwelcome skip. "Marcus, you know his name." Jenny's eyebrows shot up. "Anyway, he wanted to place a special order for tomorrow, said it was urgent." She handed over a note with a phone number. "He wants you to call him directly." Penelope looked at the number, neat digits in Jenny's handwriting. It felt significant somehow, this small exchange of contact information. Personal in a way their careful morning interactions hadn't been. "Did he say what kind of order?" "Nope. Just said to call when you had a chance." Jenny grinned. "He has a really nice voice, by the way, very mysterious businessman." "Get back to work," Penelope said, but she was smiling. After Jenny left, she stared at the number for a full minute before pulling out her phone. It was just a business call, a custom order. "Nothing to be nervous about," he answered on the second ring. Marcus Osgood. Even through the phone, his voice did things to her pulse. "Hi, this is Penelope from Sweet Haven. You called about a special order, Penelope. Thank you for calling back." She could hear the smile in his voice. "I have a business meeting tomorrow afternoon and I'd like to provide dessert for about 20 people. Is that possible on short notice?" 20 servings. That was a decent order. "Absolutely. What were you thinking? You're the expert. What would you suggest?" She found herself relaxing into familiar territory, talking about flavor profiles and presentation. They settled on an assortment of her best sellers, mini tarts and cream puffs, and those lemon lavender scones he'd tried that morning. As they discussed details, The conversation flowed easily, naturally. He asked thoughtful questions, seemed genuinely interested in her recommendations, made her laugh twice with dry observations about corporate meeting culture. "I have to confess something," he said after they'd finalized the order. "The scones were incredible. You were right to be confident." Warmth spread through her chest. "I'm glad. My grandmother would be pleased." "Is she the one in the photos on the wall, the woman with your smile?" Penelope's breath caught. He'd noticed that. "Yes, she passed 3 years ago. I'm sorry." His voice gentled. "She must have been remarkable to build something that's lasted this long." "She was." Penelope traced a circle on her desk with one finger. "She used to say a bakery was about more than bread. It was about being part of people's lives. The birthday cakes, the wedding desserts, the comfort food after a hard day. She knew everyone's names, everyone's stories." "Sounds like someone else I know." The compliment landed soft and sincere, and Penelope didn't know what to say. The silence stretched, but it wasn't uncomfortable. Finally, Marcus spoke again. "I should let you go. Thank you for accommodating the rush order. Thank you for thinking of us." She hesitated, then added, "I'll make sure everything is perfect. I have no doubt." After they hung up, Penelope sat in the quiet office, phone still in hand, feeling something she hadn't felt in months. Not hope exactly, but something lighter than the constant dread. One good order wouldn't save the bakery, but it helped. And more than that, the conversation with Marcus had reminded her why she fought so hard to keep this place alive. Her grandmother's legacy, yes, but also the simple joy of creating something beautiful and sharing it with people who appreciated it. She worked late into the night preparing for Marcus's order, getting everything ready so she could assemble it fresh in the morning. Jenny had long since gone home, and the bakery was quiet except for the hum of refrigerator and the occasional creak of old floorboards. Penelope was piping chocolate ganache when she heard a tap on the front window. Her heart lurched. It was past 9, dark outside, and Main Street was mostly deserted after the shops closed. She grabbed her phone, ready to call for help, and cautiously approached the window. Marcus stood outside, illuminated by the streetlight, looking apologetic. He held up a briefcase in explanation, miming that he'd forgotten something. Penelope unlocked the door, confused. "Did you leave something here this morning?" "No, sorry. I was working late nearby and saw your lights on." He gestured to the building across the street. "My office is right there. I wanted to drop off a deposit for tomorrow's order, and when I saw you were still here, I thought I'd save you a trip." She looked where he pointed and noticed for the first time the elegant lettering on the second-floor windows, Osgood Capital Management. "You work right across the street." "For about 5 years now." He handed her an envelope. She opened it to find cash, exact change plus a generous tip. "I should have asked earlier, but what time do you need me to pick up tomorrow?" 2 o'clock. "That should give everything time to set properly." "Perfect." He glanced past her into the bakery to the piping bags and chocolate she'd been working with. "You're here late." "Your order, actually. I want to make sure it's all fresh." She smiled. "No pressure or anything. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to create extra work." "Are you kidding?" "This is the fun part. The pressure orders, the special requests. That's when I get to really show what I can do." She realized she was still standing in the doorway, blocking him out on the street. "Do you want to come in? I was about to make coffee anyway." She had not been about to make coffee, but the offer came out naturally, and she found she meant it. Marcus looked surprised, pleased. "I'd like that if I'm not interrupting." "Trust me, I could use the company. It gets a little lonely here at night." She locked the door behind him and led him through to the kitchen, suddenly very aware of her flour-dusted jeans and messy ponytail. Marcus set his briefcase down and shrugged out of his suit jacket, loosening his tie. The casual gesture felt intimate somehow, like seeing behind a formal curtain. "This is where the magic happens," she said, gesturing around the kitchen that was really too small for everything they did in it. "Not very glamorous, but it works. It's great." Marcus walked slowly around the space, taking in the industrial mixers, the racks of cooling desserts, the recipe cards pinned to a bulletin board in her grandmother's spidery handwriting. "You can feel the history here. How many thousands of cakes and cookies and loaves of bread have come out of this kitchen? I've never tried to count." Penelope started the coffee maker, pulled out 2 mugs. "But it's a lot. Sometimes I think about all the celebrations and everyday moments this place has been part of. It's kind of overwhelming." Marcus leaned against the counter, watching her with that focused attention she was beginning to recognize. "Is that why you're working yourself to exhaustion to keep it going?" The directness of the question startled her. "Is it that obvious? You're here before sunrise and still here after 9 at night. You have shadows under your eyes. And earlier today, when I asked about business, you lied, but not very convincingly." His voice was gentle, not accusatory. "I recognize the signs of someone carrying too much." Penelope poured coffee, buying time to compose herself. She handed him a mug and leaned against the opposite counter, maintaining space between them even as something in her wanted to close the distance. "The bank is going to foreclose in 30 days unless I can catch up on the mortgage. 6 months of missed payments. I've tried everything I can think of, and I'm out of options." She hadn't meant to tell him, hadn't planned to unload her problems on what was essentially a stranger, but the late hour and his genuine concern had loosened her usual guard. Marcus's expression darkened, concern creasing his forehead. "I'm sorry. That's incredibly difficult." He paused, seemed to consider his words. "Have you looked into additional investors? A business partner who wants to invest in a struggling neighborhood bakery competing with a chain store?" She laughed, but it came out bitter. "I've applied for every grant and loan program I can find. I even tried crowdfunding. Nothing's been enough." Marcus was quiet for a moment, his fingers tapping against his mug in a thoughtful rhythm. "What if I told you there might be another way?" "What do you mean?" "I work in capital management. It's my job to connect businesses with resources and opportunities." He met her eyes steadily. "I'd need to review your financials, understand the full picture, but there are options beyond traditional loans. Investors who specifically look for businesses with strong community ties and growth potential." Hope fluttered in Penelope's chest, dangerous and fragile. "You really think Sweet Haven qualifies? From what I can see, this place is an institution. You have loyal customers, a prime location once the construction ends, and a dedicated owner who makes incredible lemon lavender scones." That almost smile again. "That's exactly the kind of business worth saving. I can't afford your fees, though." Penelope felt reality crash back in. "I'm sure your consulting services aren't cheap. Let me look at the numbers first. No charge, no obligation. If I think I can help, we'll figure out an arrangement that works." He set down his coffee and pulled a business card from his wallet, writing on the back, "That's my personal cell. Send me whatever financial documents you're comfortable sharing, and I'll review them this week." Penelope took the card, their fingers brushing again, that same spark of connection. "Why would you do this? You don't even know me." Marcus held her gaze, and something shifted in his expression, becoming almost vulnerable. "Maybe I want to know you better, and maybe I believe some things are worth fighting for, even when the odds seem impossible." The air between them felt charged, heavy with unspoken possibilities. Penelope's heart hammered against her ribs. This man, this near stranger who ordered bagels twice a week, was offering her exactly what she needed most. Not just financial help, but hope, belief, support. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. Say you'll send me the documents." His voice was quiet, intense. "Say you'll let me try to help." "Okay, yes, thank you." They stood there in the warm kitchen, coffee growing cold in their mugs, looking at each other like they were both trying to solve some complicated equation. Finally, Marcus cleared his throat and checked his watch. "I should let you get back to work, and you should probably sleep eventually." "Probably," she agreed, but made no move toward the door. He collected his jacket and briefcase, and she walked him out through the quiet bakery. At the door, he turned back. "Penelope, tomorrow's order. I'm looking forward to it, but I want you to know that's not why I offered to help. This is separate. Business is business." "I know." And somehow she did. Whatever was happening between them, whatever this growing pull she felt toward him meant, it existed apart from her desperate need to save the bakery. "Thank you, Marcus. Really. Good night, Penelope." She watched him cross the empty street to his office building, watched the light in a second-floor window flick on briefly, then off again. Then she locked up and went back to work, but everything felt different now. Lighter. Like maybe the world held possibilities she'd stopped believing in. She sent him the financial documents at midnight, along with a brief email explaining the situation in more detail. His response came through before she'd even left the kitchen. "Got them. We'll review tomorrow. Get some sleep." The next morning, Penelope was running on 4 hours of rest and pure adrenaline as she assembled Marcus's order. She arranged everything with meticulous care, making each component perfect. This wasn't just about impressing a client anymore. She wanted him to see what she was capable of, wanted his meeting to be a success, wanted to prove that his faith in her wasn't misplaced. At exactly 2 o'clock, Marcus walked through the door. He'd clearly come straight from his meeting, still in full business mode, but his expression warmed when he saw her. "Perfect timing. Everything's ready." She gestured to the carefully packed boxes on the counter. "I included serving suggestions and labels for any dietary restrictions." "You didn't have to do all that. I wanted to. This is what we do." She helped him carry the boxes to his car, a sleek black sedan that probably cost more than her entire annual revenue. As he loaded the trunk, she added, "I hope your meeting goes well. It will now." He closed the trunk and faced her, standing close on the sidewalk. "I started reviewing your documents last night. I have some initial thoughts, but I'd like to go through everything in detail with you. Are you free for dinner tomorrow?" Dinner. The word hung between them, loaded with implications beyond business. Penelope's pulse raced. "Dinner? We could meet at my office if you'd prefer to keep it formal," Marcus said, but his eyes held a question, a hope. "But I thought you might like to get out of the bakery for a few hours. There's a quiet place a few blocks from here. Good food, private booths. We could talk properly." This was crossing a line, they both knew it. Business consultations didn't require dinner at quiet restaurants with private booths, but Penelope found herself nodding before she could overthink it. "What time?" 7. "I can pick you up. I'll meet you there." She needed to maintain some boundaries, some control over this situation that felt like it was accelerating faster than she could process. "What's the restaurant called?" "Larkin's, on 5th and Oak." He smiled then, full and genuine, and it transformed his face from merely handsome to absolutely devastating. "Thank you, Penelope." She stood on the sidewalk long after he'd driven away, hand pressed against her racing heart, wondering what exactly she'd just agreed to. A business meeting, she told herself firmly. He was going to help her save the bakery. That was all, but the flutter in her stomach suggested it was already much more than that. The next evening, Penelope changed outfits 4 times before settling on a simple navy dress that could pass as either professional or date-appropriate, depending on how the night went. She left her hair down, added subtle makeup, and tried to calm her nerves as she drove to Larkin's. The restaurant was intimate and elegant without being pretentious, all dark wood and soft lighting. Marcus was already there, standing when she approached the table tucked in a quiet corner. He'd lost the tie but still wore dress pants and a button-down that fit him perfectly. His eyes swept over her, appreciation clear in his expression. "You look beautiful. Thank you." She slid into the booth, hyper-aware of how close they'd be sitting. "Have you been waiting long? Just a few minutes." He poured her water from the carafe on the table. "How was the rest of your day?" They eased into conversation naturally, the initial awkwardness fading as they talked about small things. The weather finally improving, Mrs. Chen's theories about their relationship. A disaster with a collapsed cake that morning that had Penelope almost in tears from stress, until she'd managed to salvage it. Marcus listened like every word mattered, asked follow-up questions, made her laugh with his dry observations. They ordered dinner, and only after the server left did Marcus pull out a tablet. "So, your bakery," Penelope's stomach clenched. "Give it to me straight. How bad is it? Honestly, it's not as dire as you think." He turned the screen so she could see the spreadsheet he'd created. "You're operating at a loss, yes, but your revenue isn't the main problem. It's your debt structure. The mortgage your grandmother took out had variable rates that ballooned after she passed. The terms are frankly predatory. I didn't know what else to do. I just kept making the payments I could." "Of course you did." His voice was reassuring. "But here's what I'm thinking. If we can restructure your debt, negotiate with the bank for better terms and a payment plan, you'd immediately have more breathing room. Your month-to-month operations are actually profitable once you remove that mortgage albatross." Hope surged. "The bank already said no to refinancing. They said no to you refinancing a loan with your current credit profile." Marcus leaned forward and she caught the scent of his cologne, something subtle and expensive. "But if you had an investor willing to guarantee the loan, someone with assets and capital to back the restructuring, that changes the equation." Penelope stared at him. "You want to invest in my bakery?" "I want to help you keep your bakery. There are a few ways we could structure this. A silent partnership where I provide capital in exchange for a small percentage of future profits. A guaranteed loan where I co-sign but you maintain full ownership. Or we could look into a grant program I'm connected with that provides funding for women-owned small businesses." Her mind spun. "This is too much. I can't ask you to risk your money on me." "You're not asking. I'm offering." Marcus reached across the table, his hand covering hers. The touch sent electricity up her arm. "Penelope, I've reviewed hundreds of businesses. Most of them are just numbers on a page. But Sweet Haven, what you're doing there, it matters. And from a purely financial standpoint, it's a sound investment. Once the construction ends and foot traffic returns, with a better debt structure, you'll be profitable within a year. Why do I feel like there's more to this than just smart investing?" Her voice came out soft, questioning. Marcus's thumb stroked across her knuckles, a gesture so tender it made her breath catch. "Because there is. I'm not going to lie to you. My interest in helping your bakery and my interest in knowing you better are connected. But I need you to understand that this business arrangement stands on its own merit. Even if you told me right now that you're not interested in anything personal, I'd still want to help save Sweet Haven. And if I said I was interested in something personal," his eyes darkened, intensified, "then I'd tell you I've been looking for excuses to come into your bakery twice a week for 2 months. That I've learned your schedule, the way you hum when you're decorating cakes, how your whole face lights up when a kid presses their nose against the display case. I tell you that helping you save something you love feels important in a way business usually doesn't. Penelope's heart hammered so hard she was sure he could hear it. That's a lot to put on someone you barely know. I know. I'm probably going about this all wrong. My social skills are better suited to boardrooms than romance. He smiled ruefully. But I believe in being direct. Life's too short for games. Their food arrived, forcing them to separate, but Penelope's hand felt cold without his touch. They ate and talked more about the bakery, working through numbers and options, but underneath, the practical discussion ran a current of awareness, of possibility. Every accidental brush of their arms, every moment their eyes met, reinforced what was building between them. By the time dessert came, a chocolate torte they agreed to share, Penelope had made her decision. I want your help with the bakery. The silent partnership option sounds best if you're serious about that, and I want to see where this goes, between us, if that's not too complicated. It's definitely complicated. Marcus's smile was slow, warm, real, but the best things usually are, and yes, I'm absolutely serious about all of it. They worked out the basic terms right there over flourless chocolate cake, shaking hands formally even as they both knew they'd crossed far beyond formal territory. Marcus would cover the back mortgage payments and negotiate a restructuring, in exchange for 15% of future profits, and a position as a silent partner with no say in daily operations. It was incredibly generous, better terms than any bank would ever offer, and Penelope felt tears prick her eyes as the weight she'd been carrying for months finally lifted. I don't know how to thank you, she said as they left the restaurant, standing together on the sidewalk in the warm evening air. Keep making those scones. That's thanks enough. Marcus walked her to her car, his hand resting lightly on her lower back, a possessive but respectful touch. Can I see you this weekend? Not for business, just us. I'd like that. She turned to face him, aware they were having a moment, the kind that felt significant. Saturday, the bakery closes at 3. I'll pick you up at 4. He reached up, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering against her jaw. Drive safe, Penelope. She floated home, barely remembering the route, her mind replaying every word, every touch, every heated glance. This was crazy. This was moving too fast. This was exactly what she'd sworn she wouldn't do. Not with her business hanging in the balance. Not with so much at stake. But it also felt inevitable. Like something that had been building since the first morning, Marcus walked into Sweet Haven and ordered a bagel and black coffee. Like the universe had been conspiring to bring them together. The next week passed in a blur of activity. Marcus worked with the bank while Penelope focused on running the bakery, but they texted constantly. Small things at first, observations about their days, then deeper conversations that stretched late into the night. She learned he'd grown up in foster care, built his business from nothing, valued loyalty and hard work above everything. He learned about her childhood helping her grandmother, her brief attempt at art school before realizing her real passion was baking, her fear of failure. By the time Saturday arrived, Penelope felt like she'd known Marcus much longer than a few weeks. When he picked her up promptly at 4, looking casually devastating in jeans and a Henley, her stomach flipped with nervous anticipation. "Where are we going?" she asked as he opened the car door for her. "It's a surprise. Trust me." Completely, she echoed his words from that first morning and was rewarded with his genuine smile. He drove them out of the city into rolling countryside dotted with farms and forest. They talked easily about everything and nothing, the conversation flowing like water. Finally, Marcus pulled off onto a gravel road that led to a small lake surrounded by trees. "I found this place when I first moved here," he explained as they got out. "I come here when the city gets too loud." It was beautiful, peaceful, the late afternoon sun turning the water golden. Marcus pulled a basket from the trunk, and Penelope laughed. "Did you pack a picnic?" I had help. "There's a deli that takes pity on my complete lack of cooking skills." He spread a blanket under a tree and they settled close together, unpacking sandwiches and fruit and wine. "But I did bring these myself." He pulled out a bakery box, and Penelope recognized it instantly. Her lemon lavender scones. "You went to the bakery this morning. Jenny helped me." "She's very invested in this working out, by the way. She gave me a whole speech about your favorite flowers and music and movies." Marcus opened the box. "But I wanted to bring something from your world to mine. Show you that I'm paying attention." Penelope felt warmth spread through her chest. "That's incredibly sweet." They ate and talked as the sun lowered, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. Marcus told her about building his business, the lean years when he'd worked 3 jobs and survived on instant ramen, the first big deal that had changed everything. She shared memories of her grandmother, the magic of the bakery, her dreams of maybe expanding one day if they could get stable. "You will," Marcus said with certainty. "Once the mortgage is handled, you'll be amazed at what's possible. I still can't believe you're doing this." Penelope shifted closer, drawn by the warmth of him in the cooling evening. "Don't take this the wrong way, but you could invest in anything." "Why my little bakery?" Marcus was quiet for a moment, his gaze on the lake. When he spoke, his voice was thoughtful. "When I was in foster care, there was this bakery near one of my placements. The owner was this tough old Italian guy who'd lost his wife. Every day after school, I'd go past his shop, and I'd just stand there smelling the bread and watching people laugh and talk inside. It looked warm, safe. Like family." He paused, and Penelope stayed silent, sensing there was more. "One day, middle of winter, I got kicked out of my placement. Nowhere to go, 14 years old, freezing. I sat on a bench across from that bakery just trying to figure out what to do. And the owner, Mr. Caruso, he came out and basically dragged me inside. Fed me, let me warm up, called around until he found me a new placement. He didn't have to do any of that." "That's beautiful," Penelope said softly. "He told me that food is about more than sustenance. It's about humanity, connection, taking care of each other. That stuck with me." Marcus looked at her then, his eyes intense. "When I walked into Sweet Haven that first morning, I felt what I felt in Mr. Caruso's shop, that sense of home, of care. And I watched you with your customers, the way you remembered everyone's names and asked about their families, and I thought, this is what matters. This is worth protecting." Tears stung Penelope's eyes. "I didn't know. Thank you for telling me. I don't share that story often. But I wanted you to understand this isn't charity or some random business decision. Sweet Haven matters. You matter." The words hung between them, weighted with meaning. Penelope reached up, cupped his jaw, felt the slight roughness of stubble against her palm. "Marcus." He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away, but she closed the distance between them. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, a question. Then his hand came up to tangle in her hair, and she pressed closer, and the kiss deepened into something that made the rest of the world disappear. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Marcus rested his forehead against hers. "I've wanted to do that since the first time you smiled at me over a bagel. You should have, would have saved us some time." She kissed him again, quick and sweet. "Though I think the anticipation was worth it." They stayed by the lake until the stars came out, wrapped in the blanket, talking and kissing and learning the geography of each other. Marcus's hands were gentle but sure, sliding through her hair, tracing her spine, holding her like she was something precious. Penelope felt herself falling fast and hard and couldn't find it in herself to be scared. Over the following weeks, they fell into a rhythm. Marcus handled the business side of saving the bakery with impressive efficiency, negotiating with the bank, restructuring the debt, setting up new accounting systems. He never overstepped into her operations, never questioned her decisions about recipes or staffing, kept his role exactly where he'd promised it would be. But outside the bakery, they were building something else entirely. Dinners that stretched late into the night. Morning coffee dates before the bakery opened. Stolen kisses in his office when she'd drop by with lunch. He met Jenny officially, charmed her within 5 minutes, and endured her enthusiastic approval with good humor. She introduced him to her parents over a slightly awkward Sunday dinner where her mother interrogated him relentlessly, until her father took pity and changed the subject to sports. "Your family is wonderful," Marcus said afterward as they sat in his car outside her apartment. "Your mom is terrifying but wonderful," Penelope laughed. "She likes you. If she didn't, the interrogation would have been much worse." "Good to know I passed the test." He pulled her closer, kissed her temple. "Come home with me tonight." They'd been dancing around this for weeks, the tension building with every heated kiss that stopped just short of more. Penelope knew what he was asking, what it meant. "Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything." His voice was rough, desire evident. "But only if you want to." "No pressure." She answered by kissing him, deep and demanding until they were both breathless. "Take me home, Marcus." His apartment was exactly what she'd expected. Sleek, modern, expensive, but with personal touches that made it feel lived in. Books everywhere, photos from his travels, a telescope by the window. He gave her a tour that ended in his bedroom, and then they stopped talking for a long while. Making love with Marcus was revelation. He was attentive and passionate, taking his time to learn what she liked, responding to every gasp and moan. Penelope felt treasured, desired, completely safe to let go. Afterward, wrapped in his sheets with his arms around her, she felt something settle deep in her chest. This was right. He was right. "Stay," he murmured against her hair. "Stay the whole weekend." So she did. They barely left his apartment, ordering food and watching movies and making love until they were both exhausted and satisfied. Marcus cooked breakfast Sunday morning, nothing fancy but made with care, and they ate on his balcony watching the city wake up. "I could get used to this," Penelope said, stealing a piece of his bacon. "Good, because I'm not letting you go." He said it lightly, but his eyes were serious. "I know this is fast, but Penelope, I'm in love with you, have been for a while now." Her heart stopped, then raced. "You love me, completely, totally. Probably have since you recommended those scones with such confidence." He took her hand, threaded their fingers together. "You don't have to say it back, I just needed you to know." Marcus Osgood. She moved to straddle his lap, cupped his face in both hands. "I love you too, so much it scares me sometimes." His smile was brilliant, unguarded. Yeah, she kissed him soft and slow. "You're everything I didn't know I needed." 3 months after Marcus had first walked into Sweet Haven Bakery, Penelope stood in front of the entire staff with an announcement. The mortgage was paid off. The debt was restructured. The bakery was not only saved but thriving, with enough revenue to give everyone raises and hire 2 more employees. Jenny whooped and hugged her. The other staff members cheered. And through the front window, Penelope could see Marcus at his office across the street, watching with that quiet smile that was hers alone. She excused herself and ran across the street, up the stairs, bursting into his office without knocking. He stood from his desk, barely had time to react before she launched herself at him. He caught her easily, laughing as she kissed him breathless. "I take it the announcement went well?" he asked when she finally let him breathe. "It's real. We did it. Sweet Haven is safe." Tears streamed down her face, happy ones. "Thank you. Thank you for believing in me, for helping me, for everything. You saved it yourself. I just helped with the paperwork." He wiped her tears with his thumbs. "I'm so proud of you, Penelope." She kissed him again, pouring everything she felt into it. When they broke apart, she noticed an envelope on his desk with her name on it. "What's that?" "Nothing. Just some final documents." But he looked almost nervous, which was unusual enough to make her curious. She picked up the envelope and opened it, pulling out legal papers. As she read, her hands started to shake. "Marcus, what is this?" "It's the deed to your bakery. Fully paid, no mortgage, no debt. It's yours completely and legally." He moved closer, his voice gentle. "I bought out the mortgage last month. I was going to tell you, but I wanted to wait until everything was finalized." Penelope stared at the papers, at the proof of ownership in her name alone, then back at Marcus. "You bought my bakery. Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't want you to feel obligated. I didn't want this to be about what I did for you. I wanted you to feel like you'd saved it yourself, because you did. The hard work, the long hours, the incredible product, that's all you." He took her hands. "I just made sure the bank couldn't take it away. But our agreement, the partnership, the percentage of profits." "There is no partnership. I had the lawyers draw up papers saying so. Sweet Haven is entirely yours, no strings attached. It always was." His expression was open, vulnerable. "The only thing I want from you is what you've already given me. Your trust, your love. Everything else is just details." Penelope felt overwhelmed, emotions crashing through her. "This is too much. The money you spent is money I'm happy to spend. Penelope, I have more than I'll ever need. But you, Sweet Haven, what you're building there, that's priceless. Let me do this. Please." She looked at this man who had walked into her life when she needed him most, who had saved her dream without asking for anything in return, who loved her with a steadiness that still took her breath away. "I don't deserve you. You deserve everything." He pulled her close, held her tight. "Say you're not angry I kept this from you. I'm not angry, I'm just completely, overwhelmingly in love with you." That night, Penelope invited Marcus to dinner at her apartment, the first meal she'd cooked for him. She wasn't as skilled in the kitchen with savory food as she was with desserts, but she managed a decent pasta and salad. What mattered was being in her space together, intimate and domestic. After dinner, Marcus helped her clean up and they ended up slow dancing in her tiny kitchen to music from her phone. It felt perfect, simple, real. This was her life now. The bakery saved, a man who loved her, possibilities spreading out like sunrise. "Move in with me," Marcus said suddenly, pulling back to look at her. Penelope blinked. "What? Move in with me? I know it's fast, but we're at each other's places every night anyway. I want to wake up with you every morning. I want this to be our normal." He tucked hair behind her ear, his touch tender. "What do you say?" She should probably hesitate, think about it, be practical. But when had anything about their relationship been practical? "Yes. Absolutely yes." His kiss was deep and claiming, full of promise. They made love on her couch, then again in her bed, and fell asleep tangled together, already planning how to combine their lives. Moving in together was easier than Penelope expected. Marcus's apartment was bigger and closer to the bakery, so it made sense for her to move into his place. He cleared space in his closets without being asked, insisted she bring all her things, encouraged her to redecorate however she wanted. Within a month, his sleek modern apartment had cheerful touches of her personality. Colorful throw pillows, plants on the balcony, her grandmother's recipes framed on the kitchen wall. They settled into domestic bliss. Marcus would go for runs in the morning while Penelope left early for the bakery. He'd stop by around noon for lunch, and she'd have something ready for him. Evenings were for cooking together, watching shows, talking about their days. Weekends were for exploring the city, visiting the lake, or just staying in bed, Penelope had never been happier. The bakery continued to thrive, allowing her to expand the menu and hire more staff. Marcus's business was doing well too, and she loved hearing him talk about his work, the way his eyes lit up when he helped a small business grow. 6 months after they'd met, Marcus took her back to the lake where they'd had their first real date. Penelope recognized the spot immediately, felt nostalgia and warmth as they spread the same blanket under the same tree. "I've been thinking about that first picnic a lot lately," Marcus said as they watched the sunset paint the water gold and pink. "About how terrified I was that I'd mess this up somehow, that you'd realize I was just some guy who didn't deserve you." "Marcus." Penelope cupped his face, made him look at her. "You are the best man I've ever known. You saved my dream, you love me unconditionally, you make me laugh every single day. Where is this coming from? I'm not having doubts. The opposite, actually." He took a deep breath, and Penelope's heart started to race as she realized what was happening. "I brought you here because this is where I knew for certain I was going to marry you someday. I was watching you laugh at something stupid I said, and I thought, this is it. She's the one." He shifted, reaching into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Penelope's breath caught, tears already forming. "Penelope Carter, you are sunshine and strength and everything good in this world. You make me want to be better, do more, build something that matters. I love you more than I have words for, and I want to spend the rest of my life proving that to you. Will you marry me?" He opened the box to reveal a stunning ring, a simple diamond on a platinum band that was exactly her style. Penelope nodded frantically, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. "Yes. God, yes, Marcus. Yes." He slid the ring onto her finger with shaking hands, then pulled her into his arms, kissing her as the sun dipped below the horizon. When they finally broke apart, both laughing and crying, Marcus pressed his forehead to hers. "I'm going to make you so happy," he promised. "You already do. Every day." They stayed at the lake until the stars came out, making plans and dreaming about their future. A small wedding, maybe in the bakery itself. A honeymoon somewhere warm and beautiful. Kids eventually, filling Marcus's apartment with the chaos and love of family. Everything was possible now. The next morning, Penelope arrived at Sweet Haven early as usual, but this time with her left hand sporting a ring that caught the light beautifully. Jenny spotted it immediately and screamed loud enough to bring the entire early shift running. "Oh my God," he proposed. "Show me everything." Jenny grabbed Penelope's hand, examining the ring with wide eyes. "This is perfect. You're perfect. I'm going to cry." "Please don't, you'll make me start again." Penelope laughed, but she was beaming, couldn't stop smiling. "It happened last night at the lake." The staff gathered around, everyone talking at once, hugging her and demanding details. In the middle of the celebration, the bell chimed, and Marcus walked in looking slightly sheepish. "I figured you'd already told them," he said, grinning as Jenny immediately attacked him with a hug. "You wonderful, romantic man. I knew from the first time you ordered those scones that you were perfect for her." Jenny released him, wiping her eyes. "Okay, this calls for a celebration. Boss, can we close early today? We need to throw you an engagement party." "We absolutely cannot close early. We have 3 custom orders to finish," Penelope said, but she was smiling. "But maybe we can have a small party after hours. Just us and some champagne." So that evening, after the last customer left, the Sweet Haven staff gathered in the bakery with champagne and cake. Marcus's assistant and a few of his colleagues from across the street joined, along with Penelope's parents and brother who'd rushed over as soon as they heard the news. It was impromptu and chaotic and absolutely perfect. Penelope's mother pulled Marcus aside at one point. And even from across the room, Penelope could see the emotion on her mother's face as she hugged him. When Marcus returned, looking slightly misty-eyed himself, he wrapped his arms around Penelope from behind and kissed her temple. "Your mom told me I better take good care of you or she knows where I live," he murmured in her ear. "She's not kidding," Penelope laughed, leaning back against his chest. "But I told her you've been taking care of me since the day we met. And I'll keep doing it for the rest of our lives." They were married 4 months later in an intimate ceremony at Sweet Haven Bakery, surrounded by 50 of their closest friends and family. Penelope wore a simple white dress and carried a bouquet of lavender. Marcus wore a dark suit and couldn't stop smiling. They exchanged vows they'd written themselves, promises of love and support and partnership, while standing in front of the counter where Marcus had first ordered his bagel and coffee. "I knew I loved this place before I knew I loved you," Marcus said during his vows, his voice thick with emotion. "But you taught me they're the same thing. This bakery is your heart in physical form, and I'm honored to be part of protecting it, growing it, celebrating it. Penelope, you are my home. Thank you for choosing me." There wasn't a dry eye in the building. Penelope got through her own vows with tears streaming down her face, promising to love Marcus with the same dedication she brought to her grandmother's recipes, with the same care she put into every cake and pastry, with all the sweetness and strength she possessed. They honeymooned in Italy, eating their way through Rome and Florence and the Amalfi Coast. Marcus surprised her with a visit to a small bakery in Naples that had been operating for 200 years, where the owner shared his recipes and techniques with Penelope like she was family. It was the most thoughtful gift anyone had ever given her. When they returned home to Seattle, Penelope threw herself into expanding Sweet Haven. With the financial pressure gone, she could take risks, experiment with new recipes, consider the future. Marcus helped her develop a business plan for potentially opening a second location, though they agreed to wait at least a year to make sure the first store remained stable. Life fell into a beautiful routine. Wake up tangled with her husband. Kiss him goodbye as she left for the bakery. Steal lunch hours together. Come home to dinner and laughter and love. Penelope had never imagined this kind of happiness was possible, the kind that felt both thrilling and comfortable at once. A year into their marriage, Penelope started feeling tired and vaguely nauseous. She chalked it up to long hours at the bakery until Jenny pointed out rather bluntly that she'd been late for work several times recently, which was unheard for her. "Boss, I'm just saying, my sister was exhausted like this when she was pregnant," Jenny said carefully. "Maybe you should take a test." Penelope had been so focused on the bakery and building her life with Marcus that starting a family had been abstract future plans rather than immediate reality. But as soon as Jenny said it, she knew. She stopped by a pharmacy on the way home, took 3 tests just to be sure, and then sat on the bathroom floor staring at 3 positive results with tears streaming down her face. She was pregnant. She was going to have a baby. Marcus's baby. Their family was growing. When Marcus got home an hour later, Penelope was still in the bathroom, tests lined up on the counter. He found her there, took one look at her tear-stained face and the tests, and dropped to his knees beside her. "Penelope, are you okay? Is something wrong? I'm pregnant," she whispered. "We're going to have a baby. Is that okay? I know we said we'd wait longer." Marcus laughed, a sound of pure joy, and pulled her into his arms. "Okay, it's more than okay. It's perfect. You're perfect. God, I love you so much." They sat on the bathroom floor holding each other, crying and laughing and already making plans. A nursery in the spare room. Baby-proofing the apartment, figuring out how to balance the bakery with parenthood. All of it felt overwhelming and exactly right. The pregnancy was relatively easy. though Penelope's sense of smell became so acute that she had to temporarily hand over certain tasks at the bakery to avoid nausea. Marcus attended every doctor's appointment, took pictures of every ultrasound, read parenting books with endearing seriousness. He talked to her growing belly every night, telling their daughter, yes, they were having a girl, about all the adventures they'd have together. "I'm going to teach you about compound interest," he said solemnly to Penelope's stomach one evening, making her laugh. "And your mama will teach you to bake. Between the two of us, you'll be unstoppable." "You're ridiculous," Penelope said fondly, running her fingers through his hair as he rested his head against her belly. "I'm terrified," he admitted quietly. "What if I'm bad at this? I never had a real family growing up. What if I don't know how?" Penelope's heart ached for him. She pulled him up to face her, made sure he was looking in her eyes. "You are going to be an amazing father. You're patient and kind, and you already love her so much. That's what matters. We'll figure out the rest together." Their daughter, Rose Penelope Osgood, named for her great-grandmother, was born on a snowy December morning after 12 hours of labor that had Marcus nearly passing out twice. But when the doctor placed their daughter in his arms, his face transformed with such overwhelming love that Penelope fell for him all over again. "She's perfect," Marcus breathed, tears streaming down his face. "She's absolutely perfect." Rose was indeed perfect, with dark hair like her father and Penelope's green eyes. She was generally calm but could unleash impressive lungs when hungry or wet. Marcus was completely smitten, getting up for middle-of-the-night feedings without complaint, singing off-key lullabies, wearing spit-up like a badge of honor. Penelope took 3 months of maternity leave, during which Jenny and the expanded staff kept Sweet Haven running smoothly. Marcus rearranged his work schedule to be home more, conducting meetings from home when possible, leaving the office earlier than he used to. They navigated the exhausting, beautiful chaos of new parenthood together, supporting each other through the hard moments and celebrating every milestone. When Penelope returned to the bakery part-time, they hired a nanny, but Marcus made sure he was home by 3 every day to take over baby duty. He'd bring Rose to the bakery in the late afternoons, and she'd sleep in a bassinet in the office while Penelope worked on paperwork. Customers loved seeing the baby, and Mrs. Chen appointed herself honorary grandmother, holding Rose whenever possible. Life was full, busy, occasionally overwhelming, but so deeply good that Penelope sometimes had to pinch herself. She had a thriving business, a husband who cherished her, a beautiful daughter, and a community that felt like family. All because a millionaire had walked into her bakery one morning and ordered a bagel, then quietly bought the mortgage before it foreclosed, never mentioning it until she'd asked. Actually, Penelope realized with a start one afternoon as she was frosting cupcakes with Rose babbling happily in her playpen nearby. She had never actually asked Marcus directly about buying the bakery. He just told her that day in his office, handed her the deed without fanfare or expectation of gratitude. That was so perfectly Marcus. He'd saved her dream, changed her entire life, and treated it like it was nothing, like it was simply what you did for people you cared about. She found him that evening in their home office, reviewing something on his computer with Rose asleep against his chest in the baby carrier he wore. The sight made her heart clench with love. "Hey," she said softly, not wanting to wake the baby. "Can I ask you something? Always." He saved his document and gave her his full attention. "That day you gave me the deed to the bakery. You said you'd bought out the mortgage that you'd been planning to tell me, but I realized I never actually asked you about it, never confronted you or demanded answers. You just told me on your own." Marcus smiled, that soft expression he reserved for her and Rose. "Because I couldn't keep it from you anymore. We were building a life together, and I needed you to know the truth. No secrets between us. But why buy it in the first place? The partnership we agreed on, that would have been enough. Because I loved you, he said simply. Because Sweet Haven mattered to you, which meant it mattered to me. Because I had the means to help, and it would have been wrong not to. And honestly, because I wanted to. I wanted to be the person who caught you when you were falling, who fought for what you cared about, who made your life easier instead of harder. Penelope crossed the room and kissed him gently, careful not to disturb Rose. You're the best man I've ever known, Marcus Osgood. I'm just a guy who got lucky enough to walk into the right bakery at the right time. He pulled her onto his lap carefully, Rose still sleeping peacefully between them, and smart enough not to mess it up. They sat like that as evening faded to night, their little family complete and perfect, built on a foundation of trust and love and lemon-lavender scones. Outside, the city bustled on, but inside their home, everything was exactly as it should be. 5 years later, Sweet Haven Bakery celebrated its 50th anniversary with a huge community party. Penelope had indeed opened a second location, and both were thriving. Rose, now a precocious 5-year-old with her father's business sense and her mother's creative spirit, helped distribute cupcakes to guests with serious concentration. Marcus stood back, watching his wife work the crowd, gracious and warm, exactly the person Mr. Caruso had been all those years ago in that Italian bakery. She caught his eye across the room and smiled, that special smile that was just for him, and he felt the same surge of love and gratitude he'd felt that very first morning when she'd confidently recommended the scones. Sweet Haven had been around for 50 years and would likely be around for 50 more, but Marcus knew his greatest accomplishment wasn't saving the bakery. It was loving Penelope bravely enough to take a chance, honestly enough to tell her the truth, and completely enough to build a life neither of them could have imagined alone. And it had all started with a bagel and black coffee and a decision to buy a bakery before it closed, then wait to mention it until the moment was right. Some things, Marcus had learned, were worth the investment of patience, money, and heart. Some things, like love and family and community, were worth everything you had to give. As the party wound down and they packed Rose into the car, sleepy and sugar-buzzed, Penelope reached for Marcus's hand across the center console. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for everything. For believing in me when I couldn't believe in myself." "Thank you for letting me," Marcus replied, bringing her hand to his lips. "For trusting me with your dream, your heart, your life. You've given me everything I never knew I needed." They drove home through familiar streets, past the bakery that had brought them together, past Marcus's office where he'd first reviewed her impossible finances, past the restaurant where they'd had their first real date. Every landmark held a memory, every corner a piece of their story. And waiting at home was their life together. The photos on the walls, the toys scattered across the living room, the carefully preserved recipe cards from Grandma Rose, the business plans and baby books, and all the beautiful evidence of a life built with intention and love. Marcus Osgood had been a millionaire looking for meaning when he walked into Sweet Haven Bakery that morning 5 years ago. He'd found it in the determination of a woman fighting to save her grandmother's legacy, in the warmth of her smile, in the care she put into every pastry. He'd saved her bakery without expectation of reward and gained everything that mattered. And Penelope Carter, who'd been drowning in debt and fear and exhaustion, had found her life preserver in an unexpected stranger who saw her value even when she couldn't see it herself, who loved her not despite her struggles, but because of her strength in facing them, who became her partner in every sense of the word, Their story wasn't about a millionaire swooping in to save the day. It was about two people meeting at exactly the right moment, recognizing something essential in each other, and choosing every day to build something beautiful together. The money had helped, certainly, but the love had saved them both. As they tucked Rose into bed that night and retreated to their own room, wrapped in each other's arms in the darkness, Penelope thought about the girl she'd been 5 years ago. Scared, alone, convinced she was going to fail. She wished she could tell that version of herself that help was coming, that love was coming, that everything was going to work out better than she could possibly imagine. But maybe that girl wouldn't have believed it. Maybe she needed to walk through that fear, needed to be on the edge of losing everything, needed to be at her lowest point to fully appreciate the miracle of Marcus walking through that door. "What are you thinking about?" Marcus murmured against her hair. "How lucky I am. How grateful. How much I love you. The feeling is entirely mutual." He kissed her softly. "Get some sleep. Rose will be up at dawn wanting pancakes. You're making them. I make things all day. Deal?" His arms tightened around her. "I love you, Penelope Osgood. I love you too, Marcus, forever." And in the morning, they'd wake up and do it all again. The breakfast chaos, the bakery rush, the school drop-offs and business meetings, and all the ordinary, extraordinary moments that made up a life. They'd face challenges, celebrate victories, support each other through whatever came next. Because that's what you did when you found your person, when you built something real. You showed up, day after day, and chose love. You invested in what mattered. You saved what was worth saving, whether that was a bakery or a relationship or each other. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, someone walked into your life at exactly the right moment and changed everything. Not with grand gestures or expectations of gratitude, but with quiet support and genuine love and a willingness to see you not as you were in your worst moment, but as you could become with someone believing in you. Marcus had bought her bakery before it closed. He'd never mentioned it until the moment was right. And in doing so, he'd given Penelope not just her dream back, but a future she'd never dared to imagine. A love story sweeter than any pastry, more satisfying than any perfect recipe, more nourishing than any meal. The best things in life, Penelope had learned, were worth fighting for. And the best people were the ones who fought alongside you, who caught you when you fell, who celebrated your victories like their own. Marcus was all of that and more. And every morning when she walked into Sweet Haven Bakery, now secure and thriving and everything her grandmother had dreamed it could be, Penelope said a silent thank you to the universe for sending her exactly what she needed, exactly when she needed it most. A millionaire with a kind heart. A stranger who became her home. A customer who became her forever. All because he ordered a bagel, appreciated a scone recommendation, and decided that some things, some people, some dreams were worth investing everything to protect. And because Penelope, despite her fear and exhaustion, had been brave enough to let him help, to trust him, to love him back just as fiercely. Their story was proof that happy endings existed, that love could be both practical and profound, that sometimes the person who saved you was really just giving you the support you needed to save yourself. And in the end, that made all the difference.